I keep Nikki Haley in the race, though. I think it has Trump spending money. The longer the
Yes.
primary lasts, the better for the Democrats. There's got to be no question about that. And
For money, it does, for
which is
sure.
why I feel like DeSantis needs to stay in for a little bit to make sure that the never Trumpers have a place to go other than Nikki Haley, because you don't want Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. If you want Trump to be the president, and I agree, Donald Trump is going to be the nominee.
No argument.
I don't think that that's going to change.
Man, that's some strategizing you're doing there.
Well,
I like it. It makes sense.
the idea that DeSantis would stay in the race, pull from Nikki Haley, is an advantage to Donald Trump.
Yes.
And if Ron DeSantis, if Ron DeSantis wasn't in that race last night, and Nikki Haley pulls 40%, which is about what their numbers were together, I don't think that all of Ron DeSantis' support goes to Nikki Haley, but there is a portion of people who don't want Trump to be the nominee. I don't know. That's why we have Tyler Bowyer on the show today to talk to us about everything that took place last night with the Iowa Caucus. He is an RNC National Committeeman, the Chief Operating Officer of Turning Point Action, and the host of the Swing State Update podcast. Tyler, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us today. We know you're a busy guy, so thanks for the time.
He's muted. I'm muted. Happy to be here, Annie. How you doing?
That's fine. We're working it out on a Tuesday afternoon. First of all, 50% plus for Donald Trump in Iowa. You think, was that a surprise to you? What does that mean?
No, I mean, I think Iowa sent a clear message, which was that, this was a swing state prior to Donald Trump, and it's not any longer. And there's a lot of honor there that exists. And that's why I think it was so devastating for the governor to kind of break from that. I think it would have been a lot easier for the governor, Kim Reynolds, who, by the way, I was at the Iowa State Fair 4 years ago when she was governor, and I watched her walk up and down the Iowa State Fair. No one knew who she was. And that's part of the reason why I think that probably endorsements like that don't make a huge difference, especially in the Midwest, where people are just trying to, cash a paycheck and get to work, and you got a lot of blue collar sentiment. And Donald Trump has been the man for those people. And so it's not a huge surprise that he won by a whole lot. I think it is really surprising that, I think you mentioned this, is that even with Democrats, coming out to vote for Nikki Haley, that she came in third place.
Yeah, a lot of effort from the people who won't vote for the Republican nominee in the ticket. A lot of effort to get Nikki Haley into third place, just behind Ron DeSantis. I've said this before. I'm a Ron DeSantis fan. I hope he's the president someday. Yes. I am one of those people who can hold the idea of a Ron DeSantis presidency and a Donald Trump presidency in my head at the same time. I actually think that more people are like that than not. You got to live off of Twitter to experience that. What do you think about what happens next? Nikki Haley, her big state is New Hampshire, of course, South Carolina next, which is her home state. Ron DeSantis still being in the race, even if he's not the guy who's actually going to get the nomination, I think is a benefit to Donald Trump.
Yeah, the way I look at the presidency is this way, which is, if you can't win your own neighborhood, then why are you running for office, right? And so that it just develops bigger and bigger as you go up to the national stage. And so I look at this, and there's guys that run here locally in Arizona, and they run for office and they lose their own neighborhood, their own precinct. And I'm like, what the heck were you thinking? Like, why would you think that this was a good idea if you can't even win your own neighborhood? The same kind of goes for Nikki Haley and Ron, and both of them are losing their home states to Donald Trump pretty magnificently in the polls, right? So that's an embarrassment that is impending. So it doesn't really matter what happens in small state New Hampshire, where you can spend $10,000 per voter to influence an election. We just came out of Iowa. It was probably somewhere between $1,500 to $2,000 that Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis spent individually on voters.
I saw a slide that said Trump spent $300 per vote, and I think it was DeSantis was like $1,200, and Nikki Haley was more than that. Nikki Haley got third place and spent the most per vote.
And that's just media buys. That's not including all the infrastructure that was put into place, all the other elements that were spent. So, I mean, you're talking is a significant amount of money that's spent on these things. And it's just such a silly way to do things, especially when you're looking in the mirror at Donald Trump winning effectively every poll in every state by double digits. So, you just have to look at this and say, how serious are you of a person? And to your point, you have a really good point before I came on, which was, you know, who's really behind this? Is this a Chinese push to, you know, to get somebody that's more friendly to China relations? And that's a real question, right? And we know Nikki Haley's probably going to be that person. Is this a more friendly push for the Democrats? And are Democrats giving Nikki Haley money, which we know? Are Democrats re-registering to vote for Nikki Haley, which we saw just in Iowa? You know, we have to take this is why people are so uh, boldly America first today. And this is why I think it was a mistake for Ron DeSantis not to be embracing that throughout his campaign the entire time, because he thought he could kind of split and win, but he just kind of ended up straddling a fence that I think is going to ultimately put him in third place.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. And I think that the Ron DeSantis play seemed like a really smart one before all of the legal challenges started to make Donald Trump bigger and more successful. Like, who saw that coming? Donald Trump did. He understood that that was going to be the natural course of events. And I think in my mind, I was thinking we need a plan B, because what happens if Donald Trump is in court the entire time? Well, it turns out the American people are pretty pissed off that Donald Trump
Yeah.
is in court, and they see through what the left and what the media conjoined together have tried to do to marginalize Donald Trump. We saw last night Rachel Maddow. I mean, I can only take so much Rachel Maddow. Like, everyone, I have to look at the time on the clip before I will even invest the brain cells into consuming it. And I already played it once on the show, so I'm not going to do it again. She's out there saying, it is their journalistic integrity that is going to keep the American people from consuming what the presumptive nominee of the GOP has to say after 50% plus of Iowa says, we choose you. Rachel Maddow and MSNBC know better than to let the American people listen to what the man has to say. I mean, what does MSNBC actually think about the American voter?
Well, and you bring up a really good point too with that, which is, you know, I think Nikki Haley is just as guilty as the lying, you know, mainstream media, because I mean, look, she was the ambassador to the UN. And where was Nikki Haley during this whole Russian collusion hoax, right? Like, she was nowhere to be found. She wasn't saying, "Hey, look, I was the ambassador to the UN. I don't think any of this is true. None of this is," you
Mm.
know, I had direct communication. I was the go between, you know, at the UN with a lot of these issues. And I think this is all kind of a farce. She didn't do that, right? And she knew that most of what was reported by most of these mainstream was just a complete manufactured lie. And I think that was the point that Vivek brought up that was so good, and why he was so hated by the establishment, which was like, hey, you know, I'm running against Donald Trump, but like all this stuff that was done to Donald Trump was wrong. And the mainstream media knows it. They still haven't paid for it. But look, all of the Republicans who sat on the sidelines that just allowed this to happen are held in the eyes of the voters with contempt. And there's contempt for these people. There's contempt for Nikki Haley with by 60 to 70% of the Republican electorate. And the fact that she doesn't read enough of her emails to her campaign to understand that contempt is really it's just a normal, like, you are a normal person. I'm a normal person. If I had my entire neighborhood telling me that I sucked for what in their view was legitimate reasons, and I didn't respond to any of that,
Yeah.
I'm a bad neighbor. I shouldn't be the president of the HOA or the mayor or whatever, right? Like, that is the same thing with Nikki Haley. And it's so hard for me to understand why they don't get that.
Yeah, it's hard to vote for willful ignorance, especially when it's right there in plain sight. And I understand that. The big tent argument for Nikki Haley, if the tent is getting bigger but leaving out the Republicans that are currently in it and adapting Democrats who despise Donald Trump for a whole foundation of lies that have been told that they've bought, that's a problem. We're speaking with Tyler Bowyer. He's the RNC National Committeeman, the Chief Operating Officer of Turning Point Action as well. I want to ask you about the suburban woman, and I want to predicate this with saying I'm a suburban woman, so go easy on me. I don't have any problem supporting Donald Trump. I talk to a lot of people in my circle, the soccer moms. Some of them love Donald Trump more than anybody I know, and they're hardcore about it. They love him. They can't wait to vote for him again. A lot of them, in my opinion, when it comes down to it, are going to vote for Trump. But they have I don't know why. This is something that they say. I just don't know why he has to be like that. That's kind of the summation of what they have to say about his demeanor. And I think that the suburban woman conversation keeps coming up surrounding Donald Trump. And I feel
Mhm.
like the way the Republican Party is handling it isn't the best because they're kind of demeaning the suburban women when they address the issue. What do you want to say to those suburban women as to why Donald Trump is our guy? He is who he is. We need him in this country. What's the message from you as an RNC National Committeeman?
Well, it's a great question. I'm married to a suburban woman, and yeah, she's a biological suburban woman, which is even better. Which is we appreciate that, right, in the world that we're in today.
Some do.
But I mean, look, I think that we're in this space now where suburban women are feeling the same way that the Black community has felt for so long by the Democrats, right? Which is, we have a lot of issues that we want to hear, and there's a lot of lip service that's given to uh, groups, specific groups, and there's not a lot being done. And the Republican Party, I think, has this really bad habit of being transactional, right? Which is we try to go to voters and we treat voters the same way that we treat someone that is in the checkout line at Home Goods, right, or wherever. And I'll use that for
That's
my
a
suburban
good
women because
suburban
Home
mom
Goods,
reference right there. I see what you did.
right? See what I did there? But that's not how people like to be treated. They want to know that you're hearing them out and you understand what the concerns are. And you look at some things right now on the front face of what women are most concerned about. And they're concerned about their safety, they're concerned about their children's safety, they're concerned about what's happening in schools. We know all this, right? The fact is that Donald Trump doesn't have a lot of control over those things, but your local community does. And so I think where a lot of suburban women I talk to, at least in my community, start to have a lack of faith. It's like you've got, maybe some concerns with whoever's running for president or whatever. Like you said, I'll probably hold my nose and vote for him. In fact, the data shows that they'll do that, right? So that's really not the concern. But I have less trust in the Republican Party and working all the way up to the top of ticket when you can't even handle the things that are happening in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we have Republicans who are, pushing for things that are really bad, like including, all-inclusive gender neutral bathrooms that are putting boys and girls locker rooms and all sorts of things. And so I actually think a lot of this is just relational, where it's you got to go to the door, build a relationship and say, no, I'm your guy. I'm the guy in the neighborhood that's really involved. Talk to me. By the way, here's my wife. Let me introduce you. We're normal people and we're fighting for these things. And let me tell you how we're going to work on this locally. I think that adds a sense of ease, but also urgency for people to realize, oh my gosh, we got much bigger problems to handle locally than who's president at the end of the day, who's the nominee for president for the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's an interesting message. I think it's a good one too. Tyler Bowyer, before we let you go, I'm actually pretty astonished as to how the polls, the average polls, really reflected the results in Iowa. And then I take that knowledge and I say, well, if it was accurate there, maybe they're going to be accurate other places. You're the host of the Swing State Update podcast. You know all about swing states. You know all about election integrity. When you look at the polls in the swing states across the country, Trump versus Biden, it looks really good for Donald Trump. Do you think that that's going to hold?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's some statistics that exist there that show that there's no reason why we should lose, given the state of the economy, the state of the feelings towards Biden. But you have to remember, we're now in the new century where data is accessible at the fingertips. So the preaching that we're doing every single day is that 3 or 4 states are won or lost on the margins based off of Democrats' availability to go chase ballots and their ability to read the data quickly. And so where we're behind on our side is, if this is 1992, to your question, I have no concern we're going to win this election because there's no technological way for me to identify who the low propensity or less likely voters are who can be peer pressured into voting. And that's effectively what's happening. Everybody remembers the great Rush Limbaugh constantly talking about low information voters, low information voters, low information. And he actually helped plant that into our heads of why that's important. And it actually was less important when he talks about it. Today, low information voters, can be peer pressured at the door, can be taken advantage of. And this is the reason why I believe Democrats take advantage of minority communities as much as they do, is because they're less likely to vote as a block. And because of that, all they have to do is put bodies to doors to go basically ballot chase or ballot harvest in whatever state they're in, to make up the disparity of, how much people just don't like, Joe Biden right now.
Yeah.
And that is the big concern. That's what we have to do.
Republicans have to offer an alternative. So they've got to be on the ground at the doors making those efforts. Tell me real quick before I let you go, Tyler, what if I've got Jane Doe listening right now and she's very passionate, she's a very high information voter. What does she do physically? What website does she go to? Who does she go talk to be a part of the solution so that she can knock on 10 doors?
Yeah, I mean, look, because of the Electoral College, the future of the country hinges on basically 6 states: Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan. And so if you're not in one of those states, we need your help, particularly in October of this year, to take time off. Start taking time off now. Plan ahead. Take your vacation to go to Arizona. It'll be beautiful, I promise, in October and November. Wisconsin's always beautiful around that time. It gets a little chilly, but it's beautiful. We need your help, and you can go to Turning Point Action to get that help. So tpaction.com/chase, or just go to our website, tpaction.com. We actually today are starting to collect names. We are going to have full-time bodies and entire teams. We're talking hundreds of full-time people to aid volunteers coming in out of state to make sure that we win those states. Because if we don't win those, then there's no way that we're going to win the presidency.
Man.
And that's the margins that we have to win, that we have to compete with the left.
Tyler, I'm looking at my team in the studio here, and I'm thinking of an October trip to Arizona where we cover it and we take a coalition from Missouri.
I'm thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Tyler, if you'll have us, we would love to do something like that.
And I'll break it down real easy. How we're working with volunteers is like, hey, if you can help us chase 5 to 10 ballots per day, we will take you. We will give you shelter, and we will give you food. We'll make sure you're watered, and we'll send you out and get that done.
With Ryan Wiggins here, we just throw the water on him. So.
And as long as there's gummy bears, I'm fine.
Gummy bears and water. That's all you need. Tyler, I love
We'll do a trail of gummy bears to every door for you. So
well, there's another one. There's another one.
The content creates itself. That's fantastic. Well, Tyler, I'm writing this stuff down. I want to see if we can plan something, and if it has to be on our own dime, we'll figure out maybe how to make that happen. But I'd love to see how that operation works, to cast a light on it and be a part of the solution. And I know for people people tell me all the time, they're like, Annie, what can I do? The starting point, go to Turning Point Action and learn what they've laid out the groundwork for you. You've done a great job, Tyler. I always appreciate when you come on the show. We hope you'll come back and continue to motivate us to get involved.
Anytime. And thank you always for having me.
Of course. We'll talk to you soon. Tyler Bowyer from Turning Point Action. Great to have him on the show. And check out his podcast as well. He's the host of the Swing State Update podcast.